I recently hosted an in-person event here in Vancouver with my business partner Gavin to show beginners how they can start their own Amazon FBA business and eventually become a multi-seven-figure Amazon seller. We answer a bunch of questions like how to build a lucrative Amazon FBA business from scratch, how to find winning products, which products will actually sell, the essentials for creating a successful Amazon FBA business, and how to differentiate yourself to launch a competitive product. And we answer a lot more questions. It's over an hour long, so I hope you can find this valuable. And a quick disclaimer, it was accidentally recorded vertically, but regardless, the information is what I wish I knew when I first started an Amazon business. So I hope you enjoy.
So this is step-by-step success, how to build a lucrative Amazon FBA business from scratch. Before we get into it, I just wanted to show of hands of who's already familiar with Amazon FBA or has heard of it before. Okay, cool. So a few people. Good stuff. Well, yeah, we'll get into it. So our goal for today's training is we want to inspire confidence so that you can start your Amazon business and see massive results your first time. Be able to have more time with your loved ones as a result of having a successful Amazon FBA business. We want to dispel the myths and confusion, give you clarity about how much time and money this takes. And ultimately, we want to help you see results without wasting time and money like Gavin and I did our first couple of years. So the agenda today, bit of an intro on myself, Gavin, who's here as well, when he comes up to talk about suppliers, ranking. I'll give a bit of a background as well. And then we're just going to get into it, how to find killer products, how to find quality suppliers, branding for the long-term success, ranking to page one fast, get a little bit into mindset, just a couple of slides, just calling it YouTube 2.0, and then we will be giving you guys a special offer at the end of this, and then we'll get into a Q&A. Going back to this slide, after finding quality suppliers, I know some of you already have some food, but we will take like a 15, 20-minute break. You guys can have some food, and then we'll kind of get back into it. So before we dive in, why now? Well, we can see that 51% of shoppers start their search on Amazon, and Amazon's revenue continuing to grow. The previous year being $554 billion, and as sellers, we're going to be a part of that. We can also see that over half of sellers have reported over $1,000 in sales, and 27% have seen profits increase despite having higher Amazon fees. We also see, most people, 37% are working full time, so it's not like you need a bunch of time. You don't need to quit your job to start this business. As long as you're able to spend 2 to 3 hours a day, you can do this yourself. And we can see 23% have started with between $2,500 to $5,000. I would probably suggest having closer to about 5,000 US at the minimum, but you don't need tens of thousands of dollars to do this. Now, the question a lot of you might be asking, this is one of our most common questions, is Amazon FBA too saturated? And the short answer is no. It's very competitive for sure, as are a lot of e-commerce models like drop shipping, digital marketing, other Amazon models like wholesale and arbitrage. But the thing with Amazon FBA private label, which is what we focus on specifically, is that the barrier to entry is a little bit higher. So, you should have about 5,000 US to invest into it. It's maybe a little bit more of a complex business model compared to things like drop shipping and stuff like that. And I think when a lot of people hear that, it kind of scares them away because they're like, oh, it's a bit harder, it requires more capital. But if you get into something like drop shipping, the barrier to entry is very low. So everyone is gravitating towards those models as a result. And so it's not too saturated. It's probably the least competitive model out of all of them. It's still competitive, but one of the least. And we'll show you this in a second here, but some results of like people we work with and ourselves. Gavin and I are still launching products to this day. We're in the middle of actually launching a product as we speak. So again, I'm Michael Elliott. I've been selling on Amazon for about 5 years. My business partner, Gavin Chung, as I said, he'll come up and talk about a few things here after my slides as well. But just a little bit on my journey so far. So I actually started working in a dish pit. Like before I did any of this stuff, I was working in Tawasin. I don't know if you guys know Mario's, but that was a restaurant where I was at. And worked in the dish pit, and then got promoted to making salads and pizzas. And I didn't know what I wanted to do as a kid. I just know I really wanted to build something for myself and just make a lot of money, really. At the time, music production was my passion. So throughout high school, this is kind of what I've been doing for 6 years, and this is what I thought I was going to do. So I ended up entering into a competition to get a scholarship to a school, which I ended up winning. And so I was super pumped at the time, thought this is what I wanted to do. Quickly lost my passion for some reason, dropped out in the first couple of months of being there. That's when I dropped out. I didn't really know what to do, and I searched up how to make money online. and ultimately came across Amazon FBA, drop shipping, digital marketing, kind of went down the e-commerce rabbit hole. And I decided to try my hand at Amazon FBA private label, and lost a lot of money my first time, my first couple of years, which I'll talk about in a second. So went back to school. I went to BCIT for marketing for about 2 months, and I dropped out of that as well. But parents weren't really believing what I was doing. The people around me were all going to school, and so just to kind of please my parents, I went back for marketing at the time. And then my most recent job, like before Amazon kind of became full time, I was actually putting up Christmas lights around Vancouver and kind of the Delta area before I'd have Amazon be my full time thing. This was a video, but this is me just losing my mind at work, just punching boxes and kicking them with my buddy. Just absolutely hated working. And so the first product I ended up doing, so kind of going back from that time, the first product I launched was a money gun. And yeah, I lost probably, $6,000 with this product. I did the research, it looked good, the demand was there, wasn't too competitive, differentiated it slightly, and it ended up being restricted. Amazon told me that after I purchased 500 units. So it's a dumb mistake. I just didn't know the ins and outs of Amazon yet. And so that sucked. So my first product failure, probably lost about close to $6,000 in the process of doing so. And so working to save up more money, I still wanted to continue on with selling products on Amazon. And I ended up launching a second product with a buddy of mine, and it's actually the guy who I was working with at that job cleaning up Christmas lights around Vancouver. And this was the product, the EnviroSip. These were some collapsible metal straws that we were selling. And we were pretty confident in these. We thought that they would sell it pretty well, and they did. They sold out in the first 2 months. But unfortunately, we didn't really pay attention to the numbers too much, and so we ended up probably losing another $1,000 on this product as well. And so there was my second failure. Didn't hurt as bad because I saw some sales, at least just needed to pay attention to the numbers. This is the time when I went to BCIT just because I wasn't really seeing results. And so I needed to build up more capital because again, I'd lost another $1,000 in this process of doing so. So I was working jobs at the time too. And at the time I had a thing on Fiverr, for those of you who don't know, it's like a freelancing platform where you can offer different services. I was kind of helping with product research at the time, which probably doesn't make sense because I just failed with 2 products, but I had a couple of guys reach out to me from California and just said they wanted help with the product, they wanted to partner with someone. And it was good for me because I had really no money at this time, so I just had to put in a little bit of capital and do most of the work. And that third product was Focus 3, which was this smell-proof bag. And I needed this one to work, or else I don't really know what I would have done, but it did well. The first month it did $10,000. We had about a 40% margin on this product alone. I ended up doing over $100,000 in the first year with just this product, and continued to scale from there. Kind of getting aside from the point that this was restricted for advertising, and so it's hard to scale, so I exited out of this brand about 1.5 years later. But since then, kind of once I saw success, I went full in. I dropped out of school, launched more products under this brand, partnered with a few more people, and to this day, I have about 30 products with different partners. I've generated multiple 7 figures in the process of doing so. And it's kind of due to this process where my life took a bit of a change over the past couple of years, and so I've been fortunate enough to get some of my dream cars over the past year. I had a GTS, and then I had GLE, and for the summer I had a Ferrari. And I've been able to work with people in the industry, buy my parents fun gifts, and my sister, and live in some of my dream apartments, and travel more with my family, travel more with friends, and not really have to worry too much about taking time off work or worry too much about spending money on vacation and things like this. And so the biggest part, if you're going to get anything out of these slides, is of course, the freedom to be able to do whatever you want, whenever you want. And so that's what we're trying to help you guys achieve here today, and it's what we've helped a lot of different people achieve as well. We had Aaron, who did over $7,000 in his first 30 days of Cam, sold over $33,000 in a week. Jacob did over $270,000 in a month. He's been selling for a few years and had probably 15 products, so it's not like that's going to happen right away. Kay did over $11,000 right in her first 30 days. Matt did over $6,000. Brandon did over $5,000. So had a few people see good results as a result of kind of implementing these strategies that we're going to teach you, which takes me to my next slide, which is implementation is key. And so throughout this kind of presentation, I want to make sure that you guys kind of visualize and actually implement what I'm talking about today, because we can show you what to do, we can give you the skills, but if you're not actually going to take action, you're not going to see any progress, right? So the results you guys get are entirely up to you. But without further ado, let's get right into the actual Amazon business model itself, and specifically doing private label. So choosing the right product. So we have 3 parts: finding products that will sell, ensuring high profit margins, and then differentiating your products to crush the competition. So first of all, how do we even find products? Well, there's tools like Helium 10 or Jungle Scout, and these are basically tools that allow us to kind of look at the data of a given product instead of deciding based on our emotions if something's going to sell well or not. I used to use Jungle Scout. I would say Helium 10 is a bit more accurate. It's a bit more in-depth of a tool. So that's what I would suggest to get. If you guys want, we have a discount code with them, EJM20. I think that gives you 20% off 6 months, EJM10 for 10% off yearly if you guys want to write that down. But that's what you need to kind of find products, which is kind of going into this, which is making data-driven decisions instead of emotional-based decisions. Because this is probably one of the biggest mistakes I see people make, is just thinking that the product they're selling the market's going to like and not really looking at the actual hard data of the given product. So rely on data, don't rely on your emotions unless you want to waste a lot of money. And I always say, you're probably going to start liking the product once you start making money. In terms of like the winning product criteria that we look into, this first one's potentially a little bit controversial because most kind of gurus out there will tell you to sell things with the lowest amount of average reviews as possible, which essentially is how we determine competitiveness of a product. But the issue with doing that is that's what everyone teaches, and so the influx of new sellers is really high for like 500 max average reviews or 300 average reviews. And so as of late, we've launched a few products that might have 1,000 or 2,000 even more average reviews, and you can still see results. The kind of caveat of this is you really have to make sure you differentiate your product and stand out, that's the most important decision you make when you actually choose a product. So if you can really stand out from the competition, you can get into these more competitive models. And oftentimes these more, not models, but markets rather, these more competitive markets oftentimes have a bit more demand too. The second point here is just number of sales. So I want at least 300 units sold per month. This is just an indicator of demand. I want at least $8,000 to $10,000 in monthly minimum revenue. Sales price no less than 25 to 30 bucks. The reason for that is your margins will be very slim if you sell anything below that price point. Seasonal products, you don't really need to sell them, right? Because if we can sell products that are going to sell consistently year over year, then why not take advantage of that? There's no point in trying to hop on a trend or time seasons and try to get in stock and sell out, and then you have an influx in sales during that rate season, and then kind of drops off after that. So try to sell things that are long term. It just makes things easier. Breakable products, prefer not, but I've sold breakable things. A lot of people we work with have sold breakable things, and it's okay to do that. You just kind of have to be aware of the actual risks of doing that, right? You might get a higher return rate as a result of selling breakable goods, but don't let that stop you from intentionally doing it. Just make sure you package that well. Profit margins, at least 25 to 30% margin minimum with a $10 net profit at the minimum. Any less than that, you're just really not going to be making a lot of money unless you move insane volume. And then main keyword, which is how many times the keyword that we're selling is actually being searched on Amazon monthly. Minimum 5,000 searches per month, in my opinion. This is a screenshot inside of Helium 10's black box tool. I know we've been sending emails out to all of you, and so you should already have this, but in our free training, we go over on a video showing you exactly how to actually do this. If you've not got that, we'll send it after this seminar as well, so you can kind of see more in depth how we actually do the product research. But this is what it looks like inside. So you can see I have the bullet points that we just discussed. 5,000 searches minimum. I have the monthly revenue at 10,000. You can go 8 to 10,000 minimum. Sales price I have at 30. Just don't go below 25 in my opinion. Max price I have at 80. Max price is kind of dependent on budget. Gavin and I would say like higher ticket items just because you're going to profit more typically off of each sale after costs and fees and advertising and all of that. So if you can get into a bit of a higher ticket item and you have the capital to do so, I would probably recommend it. Review count, you can see I have it at 1,000. Again, this is pretty dependent on how well you stand out from the competition. And so putting that max 1,000, you can raise that up a little bit as well, just to get some more product ideas. Shipping size here will usually go small standard, large bulky, and then monthly sales, as discussed, 300 minimum. But what about categories? So 4 categories that we look into. We've got home and kitchen and dining, sports and outdoors, tools, home improvement, pet supplies, office products, automotive, arts, crafts, and then health and household. And these are just the simplest categories to get into. There's not a lot of risk with these. There's other categories such as beauty and personal care or baby, electronics, and these are gated, which means you need approval to actually sell in these categories. And I had a baby brand in the past, and it was an absolute hassle. A lot of listings just started getting taken down randomly. And so if you want to keep things kind of simple, I'd probably start within these categories so you don't have to get approval and you don't run into too many issues with Amazon and customers as well. So ensuring strong profits. Of course, this is important. This is how much money we're bringing in on each sale after all costs and everything. So I have a couple of examples here. I've got this little stuffed animal horse, and then I've got this smell-proof bag. So look at this little horse first. So $10 sales price. The unit cost is about $2 we're estimating that. And the margin we can see down there is 30%, which is what we want, but the net profit is only $3 on each sale, which is too low, right? We want at least $10. Versus this product, $45 sales price. The unit cost is about $15, and our margin is the same, right? 30%, but now we're netting almost $14 on each sale. So selling higher ticket items, is going to give you a bit more room. With that being said, higher ticket equals higher cost, lower ticket equals lower cost. So you do need a little bit more capital to sell something that's going to be more expensive typically. But again, it's worth it if you can. High ticket equals less volume, more money. Low ticket equals higher volume, less money. There's exceptions to this, but what I mean by this is, if you have a $100 product and you have a $20 product, that $100 product is, in most cases, going to be moving less volume in terms of making less sales than a product that is only signed to $20. But because your net profit is so much higher than these lower priced items, you'll probably still be making more money. Again, there's exceptions, but in a lot of cases. And then high ticket equals less inventory, low ticket equals more inventory. With higher ticket items, say if you're selling something that's $100, you could probably get away with starting with around 300 units. Whereas if you have something that's like $25, probably don't want to start with less than 500 units just because you don't want to risk running out of stock. On the next slide, we're going to talk about differentiating your product. And so why is this important? Well, this is what separates elite sellers from average sellers. It's important to know that Amazon is not like it was in 2020 or 2015 where you could just list a product and it would just sell well. You really have to make sure you have a well-differentiated product. So generic products are going to yield pretty poor results nowadays. And so don't compete on price either, compete on product, right? If we think about Temu and also just like the growth of suppliers selling directly on Amazon now, it's pretty well impossible to beat their pricing. And so you need to kind of have a premium angle on your product. Think about how you're going to differentiate it because you will lose when it comes to a price war due to suppliers selling directly. So always make sure you stand out in some sort of way. And there's a couple ways to do this. So you can add a bonus item or a bundle to your main product just to provide more value to the customer. The better way, in my opinion, nowadays is improving the actual design or function of the given product. Just going to give you a higher return on your investment typically. Bit of a bonus here, you can add an e-learning component like an ebook or an e-video, something like that. Super easy and it's free. Let's take a look at the different ways we do this. So this was our product when we sold this a few years back, and this is more of a bundle / bonus item, right? We have some complementary products that are acting kind of as gifts to the consumer. You don't want to, when you're bundling products and you're adding bonus items, you don't really want to have to spend too much more money on the actual cost of the product because, again, it's more of an angle of having it as a bonus item or a gift to that customer. Versus this one on the right, same product, but a slightly different function, perhaps perceived as a higher quality bag, a bit bulkier. It's got that shoulder strap. One of Gavin's products, actually, I'm sure you guys are familiar with, these adjustable dumbbells that they have some attachments, different handles, so you can do a various number of workouts instead of having to buy all of these things separately. So that's another good example of how to kind of improve upon a product. But how do we actually make the function or design better? Because it's very product dependent. And so there's a couple of different ways we do this. The first way is negative reviews. So whatever product it is you plan to sell, literally just go on Amazon, type it in, look at the negative reviews of your competitors. In this case, I was looking at bamboo cutting boards. And you can see what people are complaining about. You just bring these to your supplier, say this is what I want to improve upon. And so then you already have a better product. Now, this isn't always going to work. Sometimes products in certain markets overall have pretty good quality. There's not a lot of negative reviews or negative reviews that you can really do a lot to stand out. So if that is the case, I like to use the ChatGPT method, which is simply going to ChatGPT and asking, give me 5 ways to improve X product. And it gives you some pretty in-depth ways, and obviously you can be a bit more specific of your prompt, and you can have it give you more. You can have it expand on one of these. But this is a method that I've been using for the past couple of products that we've launched. If you're kind of having difficulty thinking about how you're going to make your product stand out creatively. Now, this is where a lot of sellers crash and burn. They basically assume that the change they've made to a product is going to be liked by the market. And you can assume this if you're looking at negative reviews and you're improving it based on that. But if we're just doing a design change or a function change because we think that's what the market wants, oftentimes you end up selling a product and it just won't have any positive response from the market because you assume. So you don't want to assume that your change is going to be taken in a positively light from the market, so you want to test. And so here's how we get unbiased feedback. So we use a tool called Pickthrough. And Pickthrough allows us to split test different variables of a product, not just products, it could be packaging, logo, whatever it is. Real people will vote on what they like better and why, and as a result, we'll get unbiased feedback before we go and spend thousands of dollars on inventory. So this is an example of what Pickthrough looks like. This is a product we were launching this was going to be a bonus item for a product a few months back, and I just wanted to see what color people like best instead of assuming, and we have a clear winner. And this takes about 30 to 60 minutes, by the way. It's not expensive at all. You can split tests from like 2 different products that you up to 8. The most amount it'll cost is like $200 or $300. So the amount that you save doing this versus if you just assumed is going to be thousands of dollars. So test before you invest, right? Validate new designs and colors. Avoid costly inventory mistakes because assumption will lead to poor results. The last slide here I want to talk about is the power of exceptional design. Call this the gold mine pet product. This is a true story. We worked with someone about 2 years ago now who spent about a year of designing their product. They got a patent. They spent about $50,000 on the product. This is of course very extreme. You do not need to spend $50,000 and spend a year designing something. You don't need to get a patent. But I talk about this because this person achieved $100,000 a month within 3 months of selling their product with 0 PPC. There was no spend on advertising. And so it just goes to show you that when you really spend a lot of time and money working on a product and making it stand out from others, like you can still see really insane results on Amazon, even though it's more competitive now. So yeah, mastering design can pay off. I'd say if you're gonna get anything from these slides, just remember you really want to differentiate your product. Spend a little extra time, spend a little extra money if you can to kind of execute on that. So we'll have Gavin come up now, talk a little bit about his journey and then suppliers, and we'll go from there.
So yeah, when it comes to finding a product, guys, there's no such thing as a perfect product. You gotta do a balance between what you think is good and also what the market wants. So before I dive into product research, I'm gonna quickly introduce myself. I graduated SFU with an econ major, and during that time, it was very hard for me to find a job. So I ended up going to UBC and wanted to get my diploma in accounting. So during that time, my goal was to get into the Big Four. So what the Big Four is essentially every accountant hopefully could get into these because that's the goal, because these are the biggest 4 companies. Having said that, I realized I was already behind. So I felt discouraged. So at this time, I was 23 years old, trying to go back to UBC to get my CPA. But because of that, it took me 2 extra years to hopefully graduate. And I did the math, and it would probably take me until 30 years old to make $100,000. The thing with this, I know it's really entitled to assume that I can make $100,000 at 30, but 25, I was hoping to get into like Big Four. I would get $40,000 per year, and I would get $10,000 raises upon 30. Having said that, I realized something. I realized that those assumptions were pretty much up in the air. it would have to assume that I could graduate at 25, that I could even get a job at the Big Four, and that I would even get raises to begin with. Because who knows, a pandemic might happen and you might lose your job. Funny thing is, they did lay off a lot of people during the pandemic, and then shortly afterwards, they rehired a lot of people. So because of this, I realized that I probably need a backup plan, because there's no guarantee that I could even get into that path of making 100,000 at 30. So what I ended up doing is I reached out to my friends, and I found out that one of my friends was doing e-commerce. At that point, I was trying to get a side hustle. I ended up picking Amazon FBA because I realized that Amazon was selling physical products. Like other side hustles you guys see online, at least you're selling things physically. I felt that e-commerce would always be around, and even in 20, 30 years with AI, people are gonna want physical products. So having said that, it doesn't hurt to learn a skill that hopefully will stay around. Fast forward to now, I co-founded a company called Motion Gray, and we have actually sold over 400,000 products over the last couple of years. So really cool thing about 400,000 products is that there's around 30 million people in Canada, and sometimes I like to tell myself that I sold 1 in every 100 Canadian might be using my product right now. Even though I know that that's a pretty big estimate, but it makes me feel good to know that I'm contributing to the Canadian economy. Through Motion Gray, I was able to get 30 under 30, in which I've met a lot of people, and I've been able to network with a lot of other cool entrepreneurs. Having said that, we've been doing over 10 million in revenue for the past 3 years, and we are on scale to hit even higher, like grow probably at least 20 to 40% this year. So first picture is me graduating at SFU, that's me and my mom. The second picture is us fulfilling products at the beginning through our garage. So I want to emphasize to all of you guys, you don't need a warehouse, you don't need to have a lot of money when you first start. You can really just start selling stuff out of your house. I don't recommend that, but we started like that because we didn't want to spend too much money. The third picture is me visiting a supplier. Once again, you don't have to visit your suppliers. I just think that it's really cool to be able to visit the warehouse and see what they're doing. But once again, I'm going to teach you guys how to find suppliers without having to physically visit them. The next picture is us but buying our first warehouse. So it's really ugly at that point, but what we did is we renovated the whole thing. But that was a pretty big milestone in our careers because that was the first physical warehouse that we bought, and we bought it with cash. Having said that, the next one is the 30 under 30. That's the magazine that I was in. Really cool opportunity because it has opened a lot of deals for me. So side note is that the 30 under 30, I met a lot of really cool peers, and those peers I've done over $1 million deals so far, 2 of them so far. Having said that, the third picture means a lot to me too because that was the largest deal I closed to that date, which was 300,000 in one day. I didn't know this, but there's a lot of big companies in Vancouver that have a lot of office space, and they bought over a couple hundred desks and chairs from us, and that was $300,000 worth of stuff. So that was the biggest sale to that point. Having said that, that's my cat, that's my hobby. She she does a lot of stuff with me. Like I got her during COVID, she is my business partner. In my spare time, I like to invest in local startups. So that was us at the Blossom social event. It's a local Vancouver startup that has been growing a lot, and anytime I find companies I like, I always ask the founders, can I invest in them? The next picture is our warehouse, which is actually the second warehouse. So the first warehouse is the one that we bought on the left. The second one is the one that we bought a year afterwards. It just so happened that the warehouse beside us was selling, and we had to snatch it up because having it side by side is actually very efficient because we could basically break down the walls and just have one larger warehouse. So I'm very fortunate with that. On a side note, we are looking for the next big warehouse, and we're probably going to buy a $10 million one in Richmond somewhere. So before we get started finding a supplier and bringing your product to life, have you guys ever had a situation where you felt that you had $1 million idea, but you couldn't bring it to life? Yes, and me, I had that throughout, I guess, high school and even university. If you're not going to learn anything today, I hope that the one takeaway you get is how to reach out to suppliers, because this isn't just related to Amazon and FBA. Any type of e-commerce business, it's the same concepts. So let's dive straight into it. The first thing that's really important to understand is suppliers are global. So you aren't restrained to just local suppliers. Every country has its suppliers, and each specialize in certain products. Oftentimes, I would say 95% of us, we usually get suppliers from Alibaba, which is a Chinese platform where suppliers meet to give their information to private label sellers. If you want to sell local, let's say US products or European products, you can go to Europages or Thomasnet. Once again, back in the day, I used to go visit the suppliers. Nowadays, you don't have to. Alibaba really is the best place to get it. So where you decide to get suppliers is based on what your brand image is. So for example, if you want a more premium product, you might get local suppliers, but oftentimes local suppliers are much more expensive. You would be surprised that I would say most of the products actually do come from China. For example, our products at Motion Grade, we do get some premium tabletops, we do get some premium wood products from local Canadian suppliers, but oftentimes they are from China. So this is what the Alibaba platform looks like. You can see that there's a lot of different categories where you can really pick all types of products. Everything really is here. You would be surprised that things as big as mobile homes, things as big as, let's say, massage chairs, you can really find anything here. There's been times where you can saw cars, there's been times where you can saw like iPhone cases, it really is everything. So having said that, let's pretend we want to sell this bar cart. So at this point, let's assume we're okay with the revenue, we're okay with the price, and we're okay with the reviews. So at this point, we want to sell this product. What is the next step? So first, we're going to go to Alibaba and we're going to reach out to manufacturers. So what I want to highlight with this image is that we're not going to reach out to individual product listings, we're going to do manufacturers. The reason why is because if you talk to the manufacturer directly, you're able to make sure you're very efficient with the conversation. If you talk to products, you might be messaging the same person, or you might be messaging trade companies. So I always recommend to search for manufacturers. You're going to be brought to this page where you can see all the company's information. So right there you can see how much they've sold, how big their business is, how big their warehouse is, and even how many years they've been in business. So for anyone that is worried about getting scammed on Alibaba, oftentimes these are legitimate companies. They do have to provide paperwork to Alibaba so that they're not just going to like ghost you and take your money. So what does it look like? So let's assume we want to sell the bar cart. We're first going to reach out to 20 different suppliers. So the first thing I really want to emphasize is that you want to reach out to more people. The more people you reach out to, the more you can compare on pricing and quality. I've had many students in the past tell me that they only reached out to one person, and because of that, they felt like they found the right person. But if you only reach out to one person, you won't know what a reference price is, which oftentimes you might end up paying too much. So reach out to more people. Funny thing is that there has been times where I reached out to 20 people and all of them were bad, and I had to reach out to another 20. So once again, there is no magic number. I always feel that the more you reach out to, the better it is for you. At this point, remember to always compare pricing and quality. There is no reason why you shouldn't message more people. So on a side note, once again, you are protected. Alibaba does have a trade assurance agreement, which essentially is you pay 3% more for the purchase order, but if anything happens, you are protected. So for example, if let's say they take your money and they give you a really crappy product, or let's say they don't fulfill your shipping times, they will refund the thing for you. So always purchase through Alibaba on the first order. So now is the first critical question you're going to ask the supplier, which is the pricing. So you're going to notice that there is different types of pricing that they're going to request from you, which is FOB pricing, EXW pricing, and DDP pricing. So what pricing we're going to be most concerned about is EXW pricing. So EXW pricing is what the price is for the good to be completed without any shipping included. So FOB DDP basically includes shipping. So as you guys probably guessed, for them to ship it for you, they're probably going to charge a bit of extra money. The reason why they're going to charge more is because they're handling freight forwarding for you, and they're going to try to just get an extra dollar here and there. So what we want to do ourselves is do EXW pricing, and afterwards we're going to hire our own freight forwarding. I'm going to teach you guys how to do freight forwarding afterwards, so don't worry, and we also have really great contacts, but I've never had a situation where EXW pricing was more expensive than FOB. Actually, there was one situation where someone was actually shipping their old container over to US, but that was just one time only. So here are the first critical questions you're going to ask your suppliers. So assuming, let's say we reached out to 20 suppliers, let's say everyone's giving you around $8 for the product. If someone offers you $12, you can pretty much stop talking to the $12 person. So what I've noticed with first-time sellers is people struggle with maintaining all the conversations. So base your priority on who gives you the lowest price. So if everyone's giving you $8, focus on the $8. Don't talk to the $12 people. At that point onwards, what you're going to ask for is the product catalogs. So what the product catalog includes is all the different types of products that the supplier actually sells. So oftentimes I've been able to get a lot of add-ons, a lot of inspiration, and a lot of ideas from these catalogs. You'd be surprised, but sometimes you might end up selling some products from the catalog that was originally not your intent. But once again, it doesn't hurt to get more inspiration. The second thing you're going to ask for is the HS code, which essentially will give you the import and export tax. You shouldn't worry too much about the numbers itself because your freight forwarder will handle it for you, but it's always good to just know this so that you can calculate it into your margins. The next step is you're going to ask for the MasterCard and the product card and size. So for all goods, there's always two boxes that you need to know of. The first box, which is the product card and size, is the individual product when it's packed by itself. So think of a can of Coke. So each can of Coke is an individual product carton. For MasterCard, it essentially holds multiple small product cartons. So a 12-pack of Coke is the MasterCard, and the individual product carton is the Coke itself. You need to know both of these because these are going to help you calculate the freight cost and also the last mile delivery cost. We're going to get more into that afterwards, but it's very important to know the difference. From there onwards, I always ask the suppliers about any trademarks, patents, or certifications needed. So one thing I really want you guys to take advantage of is to understand that suppliers know the items the best. If you ever question anything about whether or not your product can be sold in the current country, just ask them because they know. Whether it's any trademarks or patents, just ask. The chances are they know better than anyone else. So at this point, we got all the information we needed to calculate margins. So as Michael mentioned previously, we want to aim for higher margins, but how do we know what the margins are? So the first thing is we have the EXW price. So that is the price of the product. The second thing that we got is the freight cost, because now we have the cost of the MasterCard. So what the freight cost is essentially the cost of the supplier shipping it all the way to the Amazon warehouse itself. You're going to have a third-party freight forwarder pick it up and then afterwards ship it to the warehouse. The third cost is the fulfillment cost, which is the last mile delivery. So this is FedEx and UPS when they ship out the product when you get an order. The next thing is the referral fee, which is the Amazon commissions that they charge you. Usually this Amazon commission is around 15%. Having said that, the goal is usually 25 to 30% margins, and your net profit is around $10. So one thing I really want to emphasize to you guys is that larger ticket items, so higher ticket items, usually have a lower margin. So they're around like 20-something%. Really cheap products might actually exceed 30% margin. So for example, iPhone cases might be at 40%. But the major difference is an iPhone case you might be selling for $10, so it's only $4 an iPhone case. While let's say if you're selling a hot tub, you might be getting 20%, but you're selling it for $2,000, which could be like $400. So kind of pick what you're comfortable with. Me, naturally, I always felt that I prefer larger and more heavy items because I think that it's less competitive. So I'm going to give you guys an example on how to negotiate with suppliers. I've noticed one thing that people struggle with the most is compromising on their differentiations. So what I mean by that is you have this product idea that you really want to make, but you don't know how to talk to the supplier to create it. So let's use this as an example. So let's say we want to sell a bucket. Our differentiator is that we want to make sure that the bucket doesn't hurt when you lift it. So for example, when it gets heavy, the metal bar, it hurts your hand because it's just too heavy. So our bright idea is adding a built-in plastic handle. So we're going to talk to the supplier and ask them, hey, how much does it cost to build in a plastic handle for this bucket? Should we do it? Is it feasible? They're going to come back to you and say that, hey, it's going to be an extra $10, and that's the only thing we can do because it's very inefficient because we got to get a mold and all that material costs a lot of money. So you're going to go back to the drawing board because we realize that you can't charge $10 more for a bucket because that's just too much money. So what you're going to realize is, hey, instead let's do a semi-built-in handle. So instead of a built-in plastic handle, let's do a semi-built-in rubber handle. So you're going to go back to the supplier and you're going to ask them, okay, how much would it be to create a rubber handle? Let's say they say $5. We go back to calculations, we realize that $5 once again is too much. So at this point, we have two situations that really haven't worked out, and we're getting discouraged because we realize that we can't differentiate the product and we probably can't sell it because there's no reason why someone would buy it. But then we realize there's one last thing we could do. Maybe let's do add-on, which is a towel, and the towel that can connect to the handle, and that itself would make the bucket less hurting when you hold it. So you're going to go back to the supplier, we're going to ask them, hey, how much would it be to add on the towel? They're going to let you know, oh, it's only actually 50 cents because the towel is just a piece of cloth. At that point onwards, you can maybe add a bit of Velcro, and then afterwards connect it to the handle, and then you have your differentiation. So I really want to emphasize this example because we went from a really complicated built-in handle to a half semi-built-in handle to a totally different type of add-on, right? So when it comes to talking to suppliers, don't get discouraged. If you have a really good idea, just talk to them back and forth and see what you can do. Nobody knows whether or not your product's going to do well. Sometimes you just got to take a risk and just go for it. So as I mentioned, it's about balancing. So focus on high product demand features, and you don't need to reinvent the wheel. A lot of times people tell me, like, Gavin, like, I can't think of any great ideas to sell right now. It really is just about improving something just a bit. If you can make something better just a bit, you'd be surprised. Oftentimes you can get sales. What I would say is look around, like your house, look around all the items you have in your office. I'll bet you in 50 years, a lot of these things will change. If you're the one that's able to think of these changes, you're going to be in a really good position. Next thing is about trade-offs. So adding new features versus the manufacturing costs. So as my previous example of the bucket, yes, we want to make really good products, but at the end of the day, it has to be reasonable. So once again, balance the manufacturing costs with the added new features. So here's how you negotiate with suppliers. The first thing is they're going to ask for an MOQ. So MOQ is the minimum order quantity, and what I can tell you guys right now is it is flexible. So a lot of times they're going to tell you, oh, we only deal with people that order 500 units. That's actually not true. It just depends on how much you talk to them. So what I've noticed is that at the very beginning when you message suppliers, don't lie to them, but maybe give them a higher MOQ so that they will think that you're a serious buyer. Afterwards, if you talk to them long enough, they will be willing to go down. I've many times negotiated something down from 300 units to even 30 units. So definitely lower MOQ is less risky. It's definitely flexible. Well, another thing too is when you're talking to suppliers, talk to multiple ones so you can negotiate better deals. The best way to get pricing down really is putting them against each other. So for example, there has been times where, let's say, the second and third cheapest supplier is the one I want to work with, but they're not giving me the best price. So I'll let them know that I really want to work with you, but there's someone that's giving me a better price, and oftentimes they are willing to go down a bit. Take advantage of it. It doesn't really hurt to negotiate on pricing. Just do it. So another thing too is I always ask for additional perks. So oftentimes I'll ask for things like free logo printing, packaging upgrades, or inserts. Depending on how flexible they are, I really do take advantage of them. So guys, don't be nice to your suppliers, just ask for a bunch of things. Sometimes I even ask for photography, for example. So lastly, once again, remember to ask questions. So anytime you're stuck on anything, just ask them about it. Oftentimes they have told me what's best selling, what the industry standards are, and even whether or not something needs certificates. There was once a product that I was about to sell, and it was actually the supplier that told me I couldn't sell it in the country. So just make sure to talk to the suppliers. They really are free consultation. So here's just an example of what a negotiation would look like. So MOQ, let's say the supplier said they only do 500. If you talk to them long enough, they might be able to reduce it to 350. Even when it comes to discounts, discounts are flexible. You often could get them down. Packaging, for example, once again, I've always been able to get packaging. It also really just depends on how much you're ordering. Payment terms, usually it's 50-50, but sometimes you can negotiate that too. Lead time is something that's really important actually, because oftentimes they're going to say that an item takes an X amount of days to produce. Sometimes you can actually negotiate this too. So for example, Christmas is coming, and I'm going to sell Christmas trees this Christmas. Right now, the production time is a bit later, but I'm rushing my suppliers to make sure that I can get it in by at least October. But originally, they were going to tell me that it was going to come in November, and that would really be too late. So just make sure to understand that everything is flexible. So the next thing is, let's say we found the supplier, everything's good to go, what are we going to do? We're first going to order samples. So what I like to do is I like to order at least 1 to 3 samples. The reason why is I want to be able to compare different samples. You don't want to waste time and just order 1 sample and realize that that sample is not good, and then afterwards go back to ordering samples and waiting again. How to save money is you can send your samples to a local freight forwarder in China and have them test it out. So what I like to do personally is I send all my samples to my freight forwarder in China. I'll have her take pictures, I'll have her take photos for me and let me know which one's the best. From that point onwards, if I still want to look at it, I'll have her send it to myself. One thing you're going to realize is if you keep air shipping samples to yourself, it's going to get quite expensive because each one could be $150 to $200. So if you guys need a contact, just let us know. We can give you our freight forwarders. The last thing is ensure the sample is actually the final product material and packaging. For example, I've had situations where people said they want to test the sample, but it's not the final thing. It's pretty much useless to do that because the whole point of the sample is to test the final product. So don't just get a random sample, please. So lastly, let's say sample's good to go. We're going to place a deposit, and at this point, everything should be confirmed. So we should have the box design, the insert cards, the barcodes, the instructions, and the logo design. What I want to emphasize at this point is you should have no doubt about your product, and you should really know everything. So prices are finalized. There's no surprises at this point. You should have done the margins calculations and know what you're getting yourself into. So once they're finished production, which could take 20 days, 30 days, who really knows, you're going to hire a third-party inspector to check your products. So you're going to let the supplier know, hey, I'm going to have a guy come in to check the products to make sure everything's good to go. Oftentimes, I ask my freight forwarder to facilitate the inspector, and it's around $100 to $150. So this is what they're going to check. The first thing they're going to check is obviously the product quality. Make sure to let the inspector know exactly what it should look like, and they're going to be taking pictures back for you to let you know if it's the same thing. The next thing is the dimensions of the product and packaging. So funny thing is, I've had situations where I realized that the actual product was larger or smaller than what I expected. That's a huge problem, right? So make sure to measure the boxes. Boxes, I want to emphasize, are very important because boxes are going to be the shipping fees. Couple inches can be a big difference when it comes to margins. The next thing is they're going to make sure barcodes are on the products. Barcodes so that Amazon can accept the product and that everything's good to go. All the shipping labels, everything should be perfectly labeled. Next thing is make sure you don't have any missing pieces. So just around 2 years ago, I had a product that was required to get assembled and it was missing screws. Right after that, I got around 50 one-star reviews because they literally could not build the product. So make sure to inspect your products to make sure that everything is there. Next is just package properly. This is actually huge because you want to make sure that your product has the right protection. So I sell wooden products that are very heavy. Oftentimes people drop their products. Oftentimes the products travel a very long distance. If they aren't packaged properly, they're going to be damaged. And if they're damaged, they're going to get returned, and ultimately it's going to affect you. So lastly is, oftentimes if you check 1/4 of the units, that's usually good enough. You can usually see if there's any trends. So at that point, if 1/4 of them are good, you're probably good to go. If 1/4 of them are missing, let's say, parts, you're probably not good to go. So you don't need to check all of them. So freight forwarding, we can give you guys our contacts, but essentially what a freight forwarder does is they're going to do all the logistics for you. So the good thing about freight forwarders is that you don't have to actually clear the customs yourself. You don't have to ever see the product. You don't have to touch the product. Where you can find them are through Google and Alibaba. What's really important to understand is you should talk to more freight forwarders so you can compare pricing. So once again, don't go with the first person you get. Even for me, if I introduce you guys to a freight forwarder, make sure that you poke with other people to make sure that it's a good price. So how freight forwarders are going to charge you is two different ways. First is through the volumetric CDN, and the next is through weight. So what that means is, based on whichever is more expensive, they're going to charge you based on that. So what physical weight is how heavy it is. So if you have a very small product but it's very heavy, they're going to charge you based on weight. But let's say if you have an item that's very big but it's very light, they're going to charge you based on volumetric weight. So for example, a beanbag, they're going to charge you off of size, but if you have a dumbbell, they're going to charge you off of the physical weight. So make sure, once again, to get someone that you trust a lot, because if you get the wrong freight forwarder, they can really take advantage of you. At this point forward, when they have your product, they can really hold you hostage because they have all your product. They can tell you that, hey, it's going to be an extra $1,000 to clear your customs. You can't do anything about it. So make sure you go with someone that has a lot of reviews. Make sure that you go with someone you can trust.
And launch products that in the beginning may have been too competitive, but as a result of you having a larger portfolio and some brand awareness, you can get into things that might be deemed competitive. So stay consistent, avoid scattery products, kind of be within one niche. As a result, even though I just said all this, scaling becomes easier, and you can eventually demand higher pricing just based on name and logo, right? So if we take Nike, for example, I'm sure many of you have seen this kind of example, but you take a generic white sneaker, $50, you slap the Nike swoosh logo on it, and now it becomes a $130 sneaker. Or taking it a step further, right? A white t-shirt, $20, and we slap the Gucci logo, and now it's a $600 t-shirt. So again, remember this takes time. You're not really gonna have the track record of all these products in your portfolio when you're just starting out. So stay consistent and be patient. I want to talk about omnipresence. What I mean by this is just having multiple or your products on multiple different platforms. I think a lot of people who sell on Amazon think that they are only going to purely be selling on Amazon in the long term, and that's not the case, because in the macro, we're really just building a brand. We're leveraging Amazon in the beginning because it's such a massive platform, and there's millions of buyers coming to it to purchase your goods organically. And so instead of creating your own website, at least initially, you don't have to worry as much about marketing with Facebook ads, Google ads, stuff like that. You'll run PPC, which is their internal advertising, which we'll talk about later on. But be present on multiple platforms, because again, you're just building a brand. And you're gonna have more control over your customer journey in the long term too. Amazon, for those of you who may not know, it's a pretty strict platform. There's a lot you can and can't do. And so eventually when you do have your own website, you can have a lot more control over the customer journey. With Amazon, you can't really talk to your customers, like yes for reviews, they might flag you. So they're pretty strict. So in the long term, it's nice to have your own website as well. And it really creates a more sellable asset. Like the end goal is to really sell the brand, or you can keep it as a cash flowing business as long as you want. But if you have a brand that's solely on Amazon, and then you have someone who has a similar brand to you that's on Amazon, they have their own website, they're on Walmart, they're going to be a more valuable brand than you are. So it's going to create a more sellable asset. Again, this is getting a bit ahead of myself because this is very much down the road, but just keep that in mind. And so as a result, more eyeballs equals more sales, which equals more money, which makes us happy. So getting into utilizing AI for branding. So first of all, it's never really been easier than now to actually execute on the branding materials of your products. So before you had to hire people out to do this, which you still can do, and it's pretty easy and fast, but you can literally do your packaging, logo, branding, your marketing or listing optimization, all within the course of a couple of hours. I do want to discuss putting too much time into these things, because I think a lot of people waste time. There's a little bit too much emphasis put on things like branding and logo. They don't matter as much as you think they do. I typically say, as you stay consistent within a niche, you will build that association. And so it's important to remember that the branding itself doesn't really define what you're doing. It's more the products that define the branding over time. Right? If we think about big brands, when they just started, they didn't have the kind of recognition that they do now. As if we think about Nike, sports and fitness, where at the beginning, if they just had one product, they didn't have that track record yet. So just don't spend too much time on these things. They will develop kind of the association behind it as you scale and stay consistent. So how do we actually do this though? Again, ChatGPT, just go to ChatGPT and say, give me 5 brand names that are not trademarked in whatever niche it is you're getting into. Of course, you can make your prompts a bit more specific. If there's a certain word you want to include, or the simplicity or complexity of the brand name itself. I said, let's go with number 2, which was Home Genius. Give us a few logos and packaging. Not that these are too great, but this was the first, result that it gave me. You can again be more specific with your prompt, the kind of colors you want, the shape of your packaging, complexity of your logo. Now, if you do want to use like a real person to do this for you, you can also do that. You can hire someone on Fiverr or Upwork, which are just freelancing platforms, and people can do this for $200 to $300 for all of that. Or you could also just use AI kind of as your inspo and then send it to someone to do for you as well. For trademark and brand registry, this is important just because, again, Amazon's a lot more competitive. I had a lot of people ask me in the past if you should get trademarked right away and then get brand registered, or kind of sell your product, test it, and then get brand registered. I would say now you should probably just do it right away. And the reason is because there's certain tools that you will have access to if you are brand registered as opposed to if you were not, such as the Vine program, A+ content, you can do PPC video, storefront. I'll talk about kind of what each of these mean in a second here, but I would suggest doing it because that will increase your conversions, and again, that equals more money. Now, in terms of how to actually do this, it's a pretty simple process. Just go to USPTO, and that's the United States Patent and Trademark Office. If you're wondering why I'm talking about the US, just to kind of note on this quick, we would suggest mainly selling in the US, so just a little bit more opportunity there. You can sell in Canada, maybe if you don't have a lot of capital, but US has more opportunity. Us being in Canada and selling in the US is actually a pretty simple process. Instead of having a business there, you still have your, I'd say, set up a corporation here, and your bank account can be set up here. You can sell on Amazon. So I just wanted to touch on that quickly because I think some people think it's a little bit more difficult than it is, and it's actually a pretty simple process to be in Canada and sell in the US. But yes, what we're doing is we're going to USPTO, you're just putting in the brand name, and you want to check if it's taken or not. And one thing to note is you can see that Home Genius Goods isn't taken, but there's a lot of similar ones that have Home Genius in it within different categories. If you want to make it easier for yourself in the long term, I would try to choose a name that isn't really similar to any other name, because it can cause issues down the line when you're actually going to get it filed. You might have to pay more fees, it might delay things. So try to stay away from anything that's too similar to the brand that you're planning to trademark. And then you can also, to actually execute on this, again, Fiverr, hire someone for $200 to $400. They can do the trademark for you. And once you have the trademark serial number, you can go through the brand registry process on Amazon with the serial number, shopping your logo or name off the packaging or product. So it's a pretty fast process to get brand registered. And why do we do this? So again, the big benefits are the Vine program, which this is going to allow you to get more reviews upon launching your product, which is really important, because I wouldn't suggest launching until, or not launching, but turning on PPC, which is their internal advertising, until you have about 4 to 6 reviews. And so the Vine program is going to make that easier. One thing to note about the Vine program is these are not guaranteed to be good. They can be bad reviews, so that's why it's important, as Gavin talked about, having an inspection agency and making sure your products are up to par before you send them out, because Vine reviewers are harsh reviewers, they're honest, so make sure you have good products, and if you do, the reviews will be amazing. You can also do A+ content. Gavin's going to go more in depth into this in the next slides, but this is essentially going to allow you to add photos where your description wouldn't typically be. So instead of just having like words in your description, you can have more photos, which will increase your conversions. And then lastly, PPC video, which will also increase your conversions. And one thing I didn't mention on here is a storefront. So if you're a brand registered and you have multiple products, eventually you can have a virtual storefront on Amazon. And if someone clicks that, all of your products are going to be within that, which is kind of bringing me back to why it's important to stay consistent, because that will have you kind of an increase on your order value, because people will see that you have products within the same niche. So yeah, that was pretty quick on the branding. Gavin's going to come up, talk about the ranking aspects, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, I'm super excited to talk about ranking because everything online is about ranking. So I'm going to use Google as an example because that's probably something we all use. When you search for Vancouver chiropractor, the first thing that shows up usually gets the majority of the clicks. The second gets a little more than the third, but a little less than the first, and so forth onwards. What this means often is that the first person gets the most traffic, which needs to get the most money. People pay thousands, if not even hundred thousands, to show up number 1 on Google search. And you guys can think about it in all types of online businesses, even let's say Uber Eats, you're probably going to buy and order the food from what shows up first. So understanding ranking is the key to making money online. So how it affects Amazon is the more you rank, the more you get visibility, which ultimately leads to more sales. So in the picture, you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's rank number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The first 4 you can ignore for now because those are sponsoring ads. So I'm sure you guys have purchased things from Amazon before. If you see sponsored, those are actually PPC placements, which means that someone paid for that bullshit. But the organic ranking, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What's very important to understand is that oftentimes the higher you are, you're going to get more sales. So it's probably safe to assume that number one, get more sales than number two and three. Another thing to also assume is that if you're on the page number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably no one's going to see your product. So really, your goal as an Amazon seller is to appear as high as you can to maximize sales. If you're up in the top, you're going to get sales. So let's talk about how to get to the top. So the first thing we need to understand is keywords. You got to understand that every item has multiple keywords, and you can think of it as different names. So my first product I ever actually sold was a guitar hanger. Those are all the different keywords for the guitar hanger, and they're all referring to the same product. But what you need to understand is that every single keyword has different search volume. So what search volume means is how many people are searching for it per month. So in this situation, guitar wall mount has 50,000 search volume, while guitar hanger has 5,000 search volume. So with that being said, we can say it's 10 times more competitive to sell a product in guitar wall mount. On top of that, more search volume equals more sales. More sales equals more competition. So once again, I want to emphasize the importance of understanding search volume. So guitar wall mount is the main keyword because it has the most search volume. But having said that, it's the most competitive because there's the most amount of sales happening there. We can probably assume that if there's 10 times more sales there, so it's 10 times more competitive. Understand this concept, guys, and you are going to do okay in e-commerce. This is the one concept I would say that separates the good sellers and the people that just don't know what they're doing. So there's an example of 2 different keywords, and these are the first 4 things that show up for each keyword. What I want to emphasize is that they're different. So every keyword will have different things that show up for the top 4 products. Sometimes it could be the same, but oftentimes they're different. So this means that you can have a chance to rank for every single different keyword. So what affects ranking? The first thing is relevancy. So how closely your product matches what people are searching for. So for example, if you're a wooden guitar hanger, you should only really show up when people search for wooden guitar hanger. Metal guitar hanger is the same thing. You shouldn't show up if someone's searching for wooden guitar hangers, but if you're searching for metal ones, you should show up. The next thing that's very important is conversion rate. So the higher percentage of shoppers that buy your product after clicking the product, the higher you're going to rank. So what this means is that if 5 out of every 10 people buy your product when they search for the keyword guitar hanger, you have a pretty high conversion, and you're probably going to rank pretty high. If you only have 3 out of 10, you have a lower conversion, you're probably going to rank a little less. So relevancy and conversion is the same, but also something different, because conversion rate is relevant to how optimized your listing is, while relevancy is your item actually what they're looking for. Ultimately, this leads to sales volume. The last thing that causes something to rank is the amount of sales you're making. So think of it like this, Amazon's a business. The more money that you make them, the more they're going to show you. Because naturally, if you're converting very high, you get more sales. If you get more sales, Amazon's going to want to show you because you're making a lot of money for them. So it's a combination of all 3 of these things. If you learn how to play around with these 3 things, you're going to have a pretty good situation, and you're probably going to have a pretty good product. So there's 2 ways to rank your product. The first one is organically. So organic ranking is based off of a strong listing with relevant keywords, high quality images, and positive reviews. So what I want to emphasize is that nowadays, if you launch your products at the very beginning, you're probably not going to get really good organic ranking. So what that means is you're probably going to be on the 2nd and 3rd stage. What you're going to have to do now is you're going to have to correlate some of your ranking to pay-per-click. So as I mentioned previously, sponsored ads to boost visibility and sales, especially during product launch. So because you're not getting viewed and seen by new customers, you're going to have to pay for your position to go onto the first page, and hopefully people are going to start buying your products. It really is a combination of these 2 things. So how they complement each other is through this. So first, you're going to boost your rankings with PPC to gain traction. So once again, you're not going to get any organic ranking, you're going to have to use PPC ads. Once you get a bit of traction, what you're going to notice is you're going to start getting some sales, which will overall increase your organic ranking. So after that, you're going to notice that you're going to start ranking for other keywords too. So once again, Amazon's algorithm is smart enough to understand that if someone's selling well for the keyword guitar hanger, it's also going to give it some ranking for guitar wall mount. So you don't have to worry about just ranking for one keyword, it's all correlated. The best expression I can think about is all the rising tide lifts all boats. So keywords are the votes. As long as you're getting more sales, all your keywords should more or less increase in ranking. So over time, your goal is to get more organic ranking, and over time, you'll get long-term visibility. There are a lot of products that I sell currently that don't need any PPC. So it's not true that you only need to do PPC to get sales. But obviously, it's because I have a lot of reviews and also because I have really good organic ranking. So what makes an optimized listing? It's really three things. It's images, titles, bullet points, and A+ content. So let's dive into it. The first thing is the hero image. So the hero image is the first image you see when you search for a product on Amazon. This is by far the most important picture in the listing because people buy based on this first image. What you gotta make sure is that you gotta highlight all the functions of your product and include any add-ons. So at this point, you gotta assume that the customer doesn't know what they want and that you have to list everything into the picture to clearly show what your product is. Oftentimes, the hero image is a white background, but sometimes it could be with a background. I've had situations where in the past products didn't sell well, just changing the hero image actually caused me to get a lot more sales. So definitely play around with hero images. It's by far the first thing I look at when it comes to listing optimization. Here are just some examples of hero images. The first one is one with a background. I want to emphasize that sometimes you can have a background. It doesn't always have to be blank. The second one, I like that because it really shows what's included in the products. Make sure to always show all your add-ons. Make sure to show every part of the product because once again, if you have add-ons, you gotta tell your customers that. I've had situations where students, once again, they created hero images that didn't show everything the product had. The point of doing that is pointless because you want to make sure to let the customer know as easy as possible why your product is that. The last picture is just a cat tree. It just shows the item and all its components and the cat's using it. To be honest, I don't think that that's a really great picture, but I just use it because it's cats. So here's an infographic, right? So the second, third, fourth, fifth picture usually are infographics. What infographics are is they show dimensions, specifications, key features, enhancements, and also why they should choose you. So in this situation on the infographic, I didn't even know what a sisal rope is prior to reading this infographic. You've got to assume that your customer knows nothing about your product, and oftentimes this is where you're going to talk about the material and all the improvements you make. So remember Michael previously talked about differentiations? You got to make sure to talk about all of them through these infographics. How much infographics you choose to make is really up to you. It really is, once again, a balance. So don't put too much information. Information can go into the A+ content, but for now, what I like to do is to talk about the things that the customers care about. So here's more examples of infographics. The first picture, I really like it because it shows you exactly what's in the product. Oftentimes, if your product has add-ons, you want to make sure the customer knows exactly what it is. The second thing is show the dimensions. People often like to visualize how big the product is so they can understand what it would look like in their house. Everyone does dimension photos. It's probably like the easiest photo to do. The third photo is just one that talks about the product, talks about the specs, talks about the material. I really like these photos too because once again, you'd be surprised, a lot of people care about the small details of the product. So lastly is lifestyle pictures. These are the remaining pictures you're gonna have for your listing. Once again, balanced infographics and lifestyle shots. Certain products need more lifestyle, certain products probably have more infographics. If you have a more premium product, you're probably gonna do more lifestyle. If you have a more technical product, you're gonna do infographics. So this is really just to showcase your product in its natural environment. This is the painting. The painting is the product. It's just showing how it looks like in the living room. So here's just more examples of lifestyle pictures. That's showing the product being used in all different types of sports. The next picture is the candle lamp warmer being used in the bedroom. So just showing how it looks like inside the bed. And the last product is a blanket ladder, just being used in the washroom. So once again, people just like to see it. They like to imagine how the product would look like in their office or in their home. And infographics are really great. So how are you going to make the pictures? So 3D renders versus photography. The funniest thing is that when I was trying to find these pictures to use for the slides, I realized that a lot of people use 3D renders now. And it's actually very rare that someone uses photography, but let's dive into it right away. So the first thing is what a 3D render is digitally drawing out your products. So because you're drawing the product, it actually offers greater flexibility. So what this person will do is you'll take pictures for him and he'll physically draw it out for you onto the computer. So it's much quicker also than photography, but oftentimes it does lack a bit of realism. Having said that, it's much more cost effective than real photography. On average, I would say a 3D render artist charges around $350 to maybe let's say $500 maximum. Photographers, they can charge all the way up to thousands, probably around, I'll say $1,000, but they can go up to even a couple thousand. So it really just depends on what you're looking for. Photographies, they often are much more authentic individuals, and they are also greater for lifestyle images. So if you're selling, let's say LV, if you are a really strong brand, you're probably not going to do 3D renders for everything. But having said that, photography has its issues. So photographers are limited to their props and their capabilities. What I mean by that is, as a photographer, let's say you want to sell a cat tree. Let's say they don't have a cat, then where are they going to find it? You probably have to pay for a cat, but you got to find someone that has a cat. So oftentimes they're limited by their props and even their editing capabilities. So for example, let's say you want to, let's say take photos for a cat tree. They don't have a cat, so they're going to Photoshop the cat into it. At that point, you might as well get a 3D render artist because their Photoshop skills are probably better than the photographers. Just because they do photography doesn't mean that their editing skills are good. But at the same time, I've worked with really great photographers and they have given me really good stuff, but it's just a bit more expensive. Having said that, choose based on your budget, product type, and marketing objectives. Oftentimes, if you guys are first time selling, I'll probably use 3D renders. If you guys need a contact, you can message us, we can give you guys their contacts. But oftentimes, it's just much cheaper and much quicker. On a side note, something I didn't mention is that if you have a photographer, you also have to ship the good to your photographer. That itself is air shipping, and that costs probably another $150 to $200. If you do, let's say 3D renders, you don't have to do that, so you probably save another $200. So that's why I just like 3D renders. So the next step is maximizing your title with keywords. So after you make really good photos, the next most important step is the title. So what you're going to do is make sure you put all the high volume relevant keywords into your title. How you're going to find these keywords is using K-Liam tag. We're not going to go too in depth about how to do that, but just understand that you should put the keywords in your title. So it is a balance between being readable and also having a lot of keywords in there. So here's an example of the guitar hangers. You see guitar wall mount is a keyword, guitar hanger is a keyword, guitar wall hanger mount is a keyword, and even electric guitar, guitar holder hook, those are all keywords. This one kind of loaded up with a lot of keywords, but once again, it's still readable. I wouldn't worry too much if you miss one or two keywords here and there. Just make sure you put everything that's really relevant into your keywords. So once again, it's about balance. So Amazon's algorithm often does favor keyword-rich titles, but customers oftentimes prefer very concise titles. So think of it like this. If you put the keyword guitar hanger into your title, you're very more likely to rank for guitar hanger. If you don't put it in there, you're leaving it up to Amazon's algorithm. So oftentimes you probably want to make sure you include all the major keywords in there. Lastly, just avoid keyword stuffing. Sometimes if you put too much keywords in there, it just doesn't look great, and then customers oftentimes they just get overwhelmed. Try to keep it informative and offer some core features and benefits into there. So for example, if there's any certain materials, if there's any certain add-ons, I'll probably put that in the title too. So the next step after the title is effective bullet points. So what I like to do with bullet points is to make sure to focus on what exactly the customer cares about. So address any common concerns and build trust. So what I've noticed recently with bullet points is a lot of people build really poetic bullet points that oftentimes just have too much information. What I realize is the best is just get straight to the point. So for example, let's say all the customers are complaining about breakable products. So let's say they're worried that your product is too fragile. The first bullet point I'll probably have is unbreakable. So just let them know right away, whatever my customer is worried about, my bullet points directly address it. There's no point of making it really good sounding because oftentimes, let's be honest, we don't even read the bullet points. We probably just want to know the specs of it and anything about the materials. So naturally, you can include some keywords. There's no reason why you shouldn't put keywords in there, just put it here and there. So here's an example of what a bullet point looks like. I like his bullet points because it goes straight to the point. It talks about the features of the product, not too long. You'd be surprised that sometimes bullet points are massive, like they're just huge. So make sure you get straight to the point. So another thing now is that you can use AI to write your bullet points. Back in the day when I first started a couple of years ago, I had spent hours writing the bullet points and they were not that great and they still had spelling mistakes. Nowadays, you can use ChatGPT to generate concise, clear bullet points and emphasize the key features. Just make sure that the bullet points are relevant, not overly worded, and once again, put some keywords in there. Consider using emojis to highlight the key points and make them stand out. I think having emojis in your bullet points is against terms and services, but I just do it anyways. I haven't gotten in trouble with that yet, and I just feel like it stands out for the sure. So the next thing is A+ content. So as Michael emphasized, once you are brand registered, you have access to A+ content. So what's the difference? The first picture you see on the left is without A+ content. So if you don't have A+ content, your product description is going to look like that. And let's be very honest, doesn't look good, it looks like a read-if, and it's just like a waste of space at that point. If you have A+ content, you're allowed to do infographics that are much more in-depth and much more bigger, like the pictures on the right. So as you can see, it's just much better than A+ content. So what does it do? A+ content is only available for brand registered sellers, and it improves their listing conversion rate. So it's actually proven that brand registered listings and anyone with A+ content converts around 20% more, up to 20% more. So once again, just because you get brand registered, you pay an extra $500, you're going to get forever 5 to 20% more in conversion. I think that itself is worth the investment. Don't cheap out on brand registry just yet. Trust me, guys. The next thing is, it's usually 5 sections of detailed information about your product. This is where I like to go more in-depth in the images and kind of do more in-depth infographics and lifestyle shots. So for example, when you're doing normal pictures, you don't actually have as much room in those infographics to go really in-depth. But the A+ content is much larger, so you can do much more information. So A+ content does boost conversions. So why does it improve conversion? It's because it's going to give a better shopping visual to the customer. So anyone that has done any website development, any type of, let's say, landing pages, realize that even the smallest things will cause a difference in conversion. So just having, let's say, more images, having more information onto your page, it's definitely probably better than not having it. So use this space to answer any customer questions and showcase the benefits of your product. Oftentimes, these are just really in-depth infographics. So once again, just more in-depth infographics. They can be pretty similar to your listing images, but just to make sure to have them. So where does this all come into play? So after your listing is optimized, the next step is PPC, so pay-per-click. So PPC ads help you get visibility faster because they place your product at the top. What we need to understand is that there are different types of PPC ads. The first one is sponsored product. Sponsored product is the ads that you see in the search bar. So for example, if you're searching for a product, these are the ones that are going to show up. Sponsored brands are the ones that go more in depth about your brand and take up, let's say, a whole section on the page, talking about, let's say, motion rate products. Sponsored display is different ads that show up at different parts of the journey. So for example, if you click into the product page, sometimes you'll see sponsored ads on the side of the buy box, on the side of the listing, on the side of the page. These are all different types of sponsored ads. What's really important to understand is to leverage all these types of ads, okay? So there is no best ad for any type of product. It's just about understanding what each one does. Each ad has its own purpose, and it's, once again, really important to understand what that is. So here's what I'd say the best practice is for when you can see campaigns. So first is experiment with all different keywords and ad types to see what drives the best results. So as mentioned before, keywords are on your listing. You're going to be able to rank for different keywords, experiment with which keywords work the best for you. Every product is different. There is no universal best campaign. So just keep going into your campaigns and play around with it. The next thing is monitoring the ad performance and track the metrics. So there's all types of metrics that you can look at. Each thing means something different. If you learn how to adjust these metrics and learn how to play with it, you're going to be in a very good position. So for example, like cost per click, you need to learn how to play with that. Because if, let's say, your cost per click is too high, you got to decrease that, right? If, let's say, certain keywords aren't working for you, you're going to have to negate those keywords. So once again, I'm not going to go too in-depth about PPC because I could talk about that probably for an hour, but it's just understanding that every single campaign has its purpose. As your product naturally gains more reviews, you should naturally get more sales. And then after time, PPC should become more effective, allowing you to lower your bids. So how this all comes together is that you have an optimized listing. Over time, you're going to get some sales through PPC, and as you get more sales, naturally your organic ranking is going to go up, so you can decrease your overall PPC spend. There's a very high chance when you first start, you're going to have to spend a bit more on advertising, but over time, that should decrease. So a lot of my products actually right now don't require any PPC at all. That's because it already has a lot of reviews and it has a lot of ranking. But when you first start, you're not going to have either of those, so just make sure that you probably have to spend a bit on PPC. So let's talk about all of this now, where it all ties in together. So the moment your product arrives at the Amazon warehouse, you're going to make sure that your listing is fully optimized. What that means is you're going to have your images already ready, your title already ready, and then your descriptions are all ready. So at this point, the moment your product arrives, there's no reason to delay out launch. Afterwards, you're going to immediately set up some buyer reviews to get reviews on your product ASAP. At this point onwards, once you get a couple of reviews, you're going to launch your PPC campaigns. So what I want to emphasize is that don't launch PPC campaigns if you don't have reviews already. The reason why is because if you don't have reviews, you're going to have a really bad conversion. People don't like to buy products with 0 reviews. Let's be honest, guys, I haven't bought a product that had no reviews for a very long time. So just remember to have the reviews, okay? Next thing is, afterwards, monitor your sales data and adjust your PPC strategies based on performance. So assuming we launched a good product, assuming we did the research, assuming that there is demand, if we do this launch strategy, more or less you should get some sales. Whether you're profitable, whether your item does well, that's a different story, but more or less you should get some sort of sales. So that's it for me.
Okay, so this might be you currently, I'm a little overwhelmed. So yeah, I just want to clear everything up and kind of summarize everything we just talked about. So in the first core principle, we covered how to find a winning product. You saw what criteria and categories we look into, how to achieve high profit margins, and also differentiate to stand out from the competition. And then second principle, we covered how to find quality suppliers. Gavin talks about how and where to find them and asking the right questions, how to properly negotiate with your suppliers, and ultimately balancing product cost versus your customization. Third core principle, we discussed branding for the long-term success. And so I revealed why it's important to have brand consistency and create association with your brand as a result. We discussed how easy it now is to utilize artificial intelligence to execute on your branding materials. And then we discussed using brand registry to increase your conversions. In the final core principle, we discussed how to reach the first page fast. So everything that kind of went in with that, including creating quality images, having the right keywords in your listing, how to properly utilize PPC to rank on page 1, and then your pre-launch and post-launch tactics to create more sales. Before we go any further, I want to talk about a couple of points on mindset today. I honestly think if you're going to get anything out of this presentation today, you should kind of pay attention to these slides, because you can learn the skills, anyone can learn the skills, but if you don't have your mind right, it's going to be very easy to give up. So shiny object syndrome, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this, and it's essentially the idea that you're always going to come across a new, sexier, easier business model that's going to make money for you faster, and so ultimately you never stick with something. I lost almost $10,000 over the course of 2 years, and if I were to continue on bouncing from model to model, I would have probably never gotten any real progress. And so you want to stay focused on one thing for a long period of time, essentially just be persistent, and that's probably going to be 90% of the battle for you seeing success eventually. So don't jump from thing to thing. You're never going to see real progress. The second thing I want to talk about is finding your big why. The reason why I have these up here again is just because if your big why is having cool cars or making a lot of money, that's fine. I'd say my biggest motivation, one of them is still to make a lot of money, but materialistic things are very fleeting. I've had all these cars for less than 5 months and sold them. And so, again, if this is your big why, that's fine. But I think if you have something that's a little bit more meaningful than this, just because I've experienced these things that are really not as great as you might think. Things like the freedom of being able to travel, spend more time with your loved ones, with your family, with your friends, being able to give back to people and to see their reactions is probably one of the most fulfilling things. And so if you find out what your big why and how is going to become much, much easier, especially when you're going through inevitable periods of failures through your business. So what now? Okay, well, I have total confidence that you guys could go out and probably have a big advantage over anyone else trying to start their journey with Amazon FBA. That you could actually see some results that probably were not possible before. But the truth is, I would be lying if I said there was kind of a cookie cutter approach that works for everyone in every single situation, because everyone's situation is different. Give yourself every possible advantage, get every hip, hat, shortcut, and unfair advantage, and eliminate the guesswork and kind of get it right the first time so you can skip trial and error and the really expensive learning curve. Just like Alex and Omar, so these are one of our more recent clients. We're actually working with them to this day running their advertising, but they launched their first product and managed to hit 10K in their first 30 days profitably. There's some of their sales. We had Brian and Julian who did over $11,000 in their first 30 days. I think it was actually their second month. Hanzo was one of our most recent clients. You can see the date up there. It was August to September 11th. He done a little over 13,000 in sales. Or Jimmy, he did just on his Amazon Choice Tag about a week ago. Fred is a YouTube video I actually have up, but he's done over 7,000 in his first month. We'll get into the Q&A. Yes.
What's you guys' take on very competitive products? Because you could see that usually people try to abstain from going and launching competitive products that are making large amount of sales, but I feel like at the end of the day, the real money is in the products that sell very often or that are very quickly disposable, or people would want to buy more often. Do you think it's worth trying your luck on launching something that is already pretty sells a lot and it's competitive?
Yeah, as I talked about in the beginning, I don't think it's an issue in getting into somewhat competitive products as long as you're able to differentiate it enough. And the reason for that also is because if you go after the kind of typical criteria that most people talk about, which is, as I mentioned, usually 500 max average reviews or below, the influx in new sellers is really high. And doesn't mean you can't do well in those, of course you can, but the influx in new sellers for those kind of products is really high because that's what everybody teaches. And so getting into more competitive products is potentially fine as long, again, as you differentiate and stand out enough. So yeah, I don't mind competitive products. The last few that we've actually launched with some of our students too have been in the thousands of active reviews, which typically people would say don't do that, but they've been able to stand enough to where they're seeing good results.
Yeah. I want to actually emphasize something is that you can actually sell anything you want in this world. So people shouldn't struggle with product research. People just struggle because they're talking themselves out of it. Because someone along the way told you that a certain criteria allows you to have, let's say, a more successful product. So oftentimes it's just understanding what that criteria is and then play with what you're comfortable with. So for example, if let's say the revenue is an X amount, you should know that if you launch this product, you can expect this amount of revenue. Don't expect more than what it actually says. You need to just understand the criteria. And then from there, you can sell anything you want. So for me, I launch anything I want now because I have the capital, I have the ability to launch it. But when I first started, I didn't do that because I didn't have as much money. So what I always try to tell my students is play with what you're comfortable with, but first understand what the criteria is. So yeah, any other questions?
At the beginning, you said that at your first couple launches that failed, that you weren't paying attention to the numbers. Is there a specific area that you were blind to, or just all?
Honestly, for me, I think it was just that I sold a pretty low price product and I was just ignorant to the process and not realizing that after fees and everything, my margins weren't going to be that great. I think I was far into the process to where I probably knew I shouldn't have sold it, but because we'd already kind of executed on the supplier and brand and all this, I had confidence that maybe we'd be able to push enough volume. So you can be very clear on your margins ahead of time using tools like Helium 10. So it wasn't really anything specific. I just kind of was ignorant to it at the time because I was deep into it. Yeah.
If you made it to the end of this video and want some more resources to help you start a successful Amazon business, be sure to check out the links in my description. I have free resources and I also offer one-to-one coaching. See you in the next video.